Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. We have a really special episode today that I'm excited about. But first, let me bring in our host, Hal Humphreys. Hey, Hal, how are you doing?
I'm doing great today, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. We have an exciting guest today. It's Jason Feifer, the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, and our keynote speaker at Valuation Expo. He's also the best-selling author of Built for Tomorrow, an action plan for embracing change, adapting fast, and future-proofing your career. Let me bring him in. Hey, Jason.
Hey, guys. Great to see you. Great to see you in person at the Expo.
Jason, it's so good to see you. And, I want to take a real quick second and just give a big shout out to ServiceLink for sponsoring Jason's keynote presentation at Val Expo. Jason, we usually have guests on the show that are real estate appraisers or part of the valuation profession. You are neither. Can you tell us a little bit about your list? Let our listeners know a little bit about you. Who is Jason Feifer?
A fine question. I appreciate that. I appreciate the sponsor who's allowing me to come here and spend time with you all, come there and spend time with you all. So who am I? Well, I'm the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. And you might ask, well, why do I care what a magazine editor has to say? That's a fair question. The answer is because what I really am is an incredibly lucky bastard who gets to spend all his time learning from the most accomplished people in business around the world. And I have spent years absorbing their lessons, their insights, and really understanding what I find to be the single most important thing that they do, which is change, which is to be adaptable. I found that the most successful entrepreneurs and leaders around the world all have developed a unique personal relationship with change, and that unique personal relationship enables them to grow and build in ways that others can't. And I devoted myself to understanding that, became very curious about it. I felt like the way to help other people was to systematize that and share it. So that's the book that I wrote, and that's now the work that I do, traveling around and working with fine folks like you all.
I love that introduction. When people pick up a copy of Entrepreneur Magazine, you have to know that Jason has a hand in pretty much every part of the magazine, but he has spoken to some amazing people over the years. And I don't want to get into who all you've spoken to because we can't get to all of them. It's just an amazing list of entrepreneurs, celebrities that have gone to the entrepreneurial world, business thought leaders. It's just incredible. Here's what I want to do. Jason, I'm going to take a real quick break and we're going to hear from one of our sponsors and we will be right back.
LIA Administrators and Insurance Services, serving valuation professionals since 1978. We provide E&O insurance with a commitment to superior customer service, outstanding liability education, and unmatched claim defense, benefiting over 10,000 real estate professionals nationwide. Explore our exclusive appraiser liability education by Peter Christensen and cost-effective seminars designed to foster your growth. Our underwriters, with an average of 26 years of experience each, are dedicated to supporting appraisers. Visit liability.com to discover how LIA can safeguard your business.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Hal Humphreys. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzz. I'm joined today by Jason Feifer, editor-in-chief at Entrepreneur Magazine. And, we are appraisers. Most of us that are listening to the podcast, most that are going to be involved in the podcast are appraisers. And everybody in the room, except for Jason, is going to know the phrase USPAP or the term USPAP. And that is our minimum standard as appraisers. USPAP uses the word change 7 times in the very first comment on Standards Rule 1. USPAP admonishes us to stay abreast of changes. Changes in the field of real estate, changes in cost and manner of construction, changes in the legal framework that deals with appraisers, changes in appraisal theory. Yes, theory can change. Change is such a key part of USPAP that it even acknowledges in the foreword that the document is designed to change with the times. Jason, would you say that you're an expert in the study of change?
I think as much as anyone can be. Change is changing so much that nobody can fully claim command over it. But I love that count that you just did and how you hammered home how absolutely important this is in the appraisal industry, because it certainly is. This is frankly why I'm in business, is because I get calls all day from organizations, from leaders, from people in business who are saying some radical shift has taken place either internally or externally, and we need to figure out how to navigate through this. So if that is something that resonates with you as you listen to this, I want to tell you that that is incredibly natural. That is what it means to be in business. I mean, if we didn't have problems to solve, then exactly what is it that we would be doing? And I often think back to this article that I read in Harvard Business Review a number of years ago. And the question was, why do big companies stop innovating? And whether or not you identify as a big company, I think this is worth paying attention to. Because the answer was really compelling. It was this. Big companies start with an innovation, with a toehold in a marketplace. You do something, people need it, people value it. That's your business, that's your work. But over time, you start to shift more and more, and eventually all of your resources away from innovation and towards efficiency. And there's nothing wrong with efficiency. We like being efficient, but the problem is that if you put all of your energy towards doing the same exact thing, faster, better, cheaper, then eventually you become so blind to the changes that are around you, and everyone you work with is incentivized to just keep doing the same thing over and over again, that you are left without an ability to react to whatever is happening in your industry. And oftentimes, Hal, the thing is that what is shifting in the industry is not in the spaces that you have focused on as the area of concern. So a great example of this is I was interviewing once a disruption expert at Cambridge named Hamza Mudassir, and he coaches businesses through moments of great disruption. And he told me this wonderful anecdote, which is he says, when Hal, I'm sure you can provide the answer here. When we think of what killed Kodak camera film, what's the usual answer that people give to that question?
Digital photography.
Digital photography, right? It seems obvious. And there's good reason for that, because Kodak was one of the inventors of digital photography. And then they very famously just put it on the shelf and didn't pursue it. But Hamza says, no. There's another way to think about this. And that is that the thing that actually killed Kodak wasn't digital photography. The thing that killed Kodak was Facebook. Now, can you imagine why?
Yeah, that starts to make sense. And, I'm glad you brought up Kodak, because I just finished another book that I adored by Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game. And that's one of the anecdotes that he uses in his book is talking about Kodak. And I think this notion of change and considering our business endeavors as an infinite game, not a finite, I'm going to win. I think that's a really useful thing, because if you have an infinite game mindset, you can change and you can adapt, and you will be more likely to change and adapt. But tell me more about Facebook killing Kodak.
Yeah. And then I want to double click on Infinite Game, because you're absolutely right. That's the only way to win, is to think so long term that everything that you do is done with the premise that what you do today can't be what you do tomorrow. When you start to build that reality into the way in which you operate today, it starts to radically shift the way that you think about your business. But yeah, let's just tell the end of the story here about Kodak and Facebook. So the idea is this. Hal, do you remember early digital cameras?
Oh, I bought a digital camera. I think it was a Sony when I was working for one of my first employers who was an appraiser, and this thing was like 2 megapixels,
Yeah, there it is.
and I did all of my photos with a digital camera, and I put them into a report in Microsoft Word or whatever the predecessor that was. And it took me about 7 hours to resize the photos to make them be the same size. And then my boss at the time said, no, you cannot use digital photo for real estate appraisals. It's too easy to manipulate the image. And today there's not a single appraiser that uses digital photos. Matter of fact, most of them don't even use digital cameras. They use the phone.
Well, that is fascinating. That little window into appraisal land that I didn't know. So, yeah, what you're describing there is exactly what it was like to have the original digital cameras. We're talking about digital cameras as if they were an obvious thing to replace film, but at the time they weren't. They came out and they sucked. They had very low resolution, very little memory. They were huge. They were clunky. People sometimes bought them as novelties, but you didn't know what to do with them. You were still, if you were going to take a photo that mattered at your kid's birthday party, you were going to do that with film, and then you were going to run to Walgreens and you're going to have it developed, and then you're going to put it on your fridge, and that's what you're going to do. And the thing that changed all that was Facebook, because Facebook was the first compelling use case for digital photos. Remember, Facebook was the place where people would upload their photos, and they started to treat Facebook as just a photo storage system. And all their photo albums would be on Facebook. And this was really the first time that everyone said, "Oh my gosh, I know what to do with digital photos." And now that I know what to do with digital photos, I'm excited for that digital camera. And that is what spurred more adoption and therefore development of digital photography, which is ultimately the thing that killed Kodak. And the reason I tell you that story is because nobody at Kodak could have possibly thought we have to watch out for social media. Instead, what they were thinking was we have to watch out for other camera film companies because other camera film companies are our competition. But no, that's the thing. In disrupted marketplaces, often the disruptor is coming from an area that you're not anticipating because you're not focused enough on how the business is changing. Now, how could Kodak have anticipated that? My answer to you is that they needed to think more fundamentally about the business that they were in. Kodak thought of itself as being in the camera film business. What it really should have done is think of itself as in the memory business. We are in the business of capturing memories. And if you can reframe the work that you do that way, down to the outcome of the work that you do and not just the product or service that you happen to do and work with today, then you start to recognize where additional opportunities and threats are. That is the starting point for the infinite game. Because if I'm in the camera film business, then it's pretty clear how I win. But if I'm in the memory business, there are always going to be companies coming in and trying to capture in some way the memory business, which means I got to be on my toes, which means that I got to be everywhere. And could you have just imagined if an executive at Kodak saw this random college dropout starting this company called The Facebook and said, "Wait a second, that's a business we should get in. We should get into that right now." Whew, history would be different.
I'm thinking of the scene from Mad Men where Don Draper shows the carousel, and it is that example is selling memories. It's a carousel. It's not it's like he did a really good job of the writers did a really good job of telling him how to do that thing. But yeah, I mean, I think thinking about the core purpose of what it is a person does in their entrepreneurial endeavors helps you to focus on what it is you really do. And then change itself is not that hard. If you focus on a specific product or a specific process or a specific thing that has made it, maybe it's made it easy for you along the way. But if you focus on the core value of what it is you do as a business person, then I think you're more open to change. You know, Jason, the valuation space is going through a huge amount of change. There's technology, there's disruptors coming from every direction. You've talked about the importance of addressing change and being willing to change. I do want to take just 1 second and reiterate: build for tomorrow, an action plan for embracing change, adapting fast, and future-proofing your career. It is Jason Feifer's book. You can get it anywhere you buy books. I think probably Amazon is really easy, or you can go to Jason Feifer's website and find it there. Let's do this. Let's take a real quick break and hear from one of our sponsors.
The Dictionary of Real Estate Appraisal, 7th edition, is a landmark text that reflects the depth and breadth of appraisal knowledge. Each entry, definition, and reference has been painstakingly researched and designed to reflect an expert understanding of issues that currently impact the profession. The new dictionary is an essential authoritative resource for all appraisers. The dictionary is divided into 2 sections, an alphabetical listing of terms directly related to real estate appraisal, and an addendum with topical glossaries and compilations of terms used by related real estate professionals. Find it at appraisalinstitute.org/dictionary7.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzz. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host, and I'm joined today by Jason Feifer, editor-in-chief at Entrepreneur Magazine. And just in a nod towards full disclosure, we didn't just randomly reach out to Jason Feifer as the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. Jason is a friend. And Jason, I'm sure if you were able to hear the ad reads, you might recognize the voice of Kim Green, the lovely Kim Green.
I was thinking that as I heard it. Yep.
Jason, I cannot express how excited we are all to have you as the keynote speaker at Valuation Expo. Val Expo is in August 19th, 21st at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I know you're crazy busy. And thank you to ServiceLink for sponsoring this session. Without giving away too much, can you give our listeners just a hint of what they might expect at Val Expo?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, what we've talked about here is just the starting point. Every time that I walk on stage talking to anybody, and I'll do it right there at Val Expo, I say, look, I'm not here to tell you how to do your business. You know how to do that much better than I do. Hal, as you've already established, what do I know? I'm not from the appraisal land. But what I am coming with is deep insights into the psychology of change, why change feels like loss to so many of us, and how we can focus on, and how I have found the most successful, adaptable people can focus on pursuing gain. Because this is just something I can't stress enough. At the other end of change is gain, is what I call the wouldn't go back moment, where you say, I have something so new and valuable, I wouldn't want to go back to a time before I had that. I think that the more in which we can recognize that the things that we have inside of us, that our skills are transferable, and that every new change is really an opportunity to do what we already do best in new and different and perhaps larger and more impactful ways, the more exciting change can look like. And I'm not going to be there to just cheerlead. Nobody needs a guy on stage just cheerleading. The thing that I want to do is give you practical exercises, frameworks, things that you can use to apply to the changes that are in your world. We'll talk about we'll talk more about how to recognize that transferable value in yourself. We'll talk about how to think differently about technology. We'll talk about how to connect in better ways with the people who you serve, and frankly, the people who you are going to be introducing changes to. Because when something changes in your business, you are now a change maker, and you've got to introduce it to others. I have a concept that I call the bridge of familiarity, where you use the things that are familiar to the people who you serve as a means of building a bridge to bring new change to them. I'm really excited about this. How, as you say, we've been friends for years. You've told me so much about the work that you do with appraisers. It's really exciting. And I just can't wait to see it all in action and be there with y'all.
It's going to be a big time. Jason, thank you again. Jim Morrison, do we have anything else we need to cover with Jason today?
Yeah, well, this is our anonymous appraiser section. Jason, there might not be much that you can handle on this. But,
Jason, I'm just going to tell you, listen to the question, and if you have an answer, give it.
Sure. Okay, I can't promise it'll be good, but I'll give an answer.
So our listeners write in and will ask anonymously a question or issue they're dealing with an appraisal. This person asked, I'm appraising a house that has a mother-in-law suite integrated into the base floor level of the house. It's a 4-year-old home, roughly 4,000 square feet, and 2 stories, with the integrated ADU accessory dwelling unit having a separate kitchen, shared interior, as well as private exterior access. Fannie Mae guidance seems to suggest GLA should be broken out separately, but the ADU is integrated in the home as roughly half of the first floor, all falling within the same 4 corners of the dwelling.
Oh boy. Jason, what would you say? Just maybe not have your mother-in-law move in with you?
Oh, come on. You took the joke. That was the only thing I had to say about this. That was it.
All right. So I literally just took the thunder right out of your hands. I apologize for that. Here's what I'll say to our anonymous appraiser. If you really want to know the answer to this, as with anything else dealing with how to report things, check out the Fannie Mae Selling Guide. If you Google Selling Guide Fannie Mae or go to fanniemae.com and search for it, you'll find the Selling Guide. Literally, there's a search function in there. Type in accessory dwelling units. Here's what Fannie Mae says. When reporting living area of an ADU, it should not be included with the gross living area calculation of the primary dwelling. It should be reported and adjusted for on a separate line in the grid, unless the ADU is contained within or part of the primary dwelling with interior access and is above grade. So I would say to the anonymous appraiser, it's clear as mud. You should report it as separate living area unless the ADU is contained within the house, which it sounds like that's your situation. I would say this. Calculate the square footage of the house according to ANSI standards, report it the way you're supposed to do according to ANSI standards, and then refer to the selling guide. Whatever you decide to do with the ADU, if you put it on a separate line or deal with it in the main gross living area, tell what you did and why you did it. And I think you'll probably be okay. Jim, does that do it for us?
Yeah, I think that's a good answer for it. Jason, we're so excited. We could have listened to you talk for another half hour. We really appreciate you taking the time with us. It's so exciting. I can't wait to watch you at Valuation Expo this year.
Oh, well, hey, thanks for having me. I could have listened to some more of that. I find that dipping into different industries that I don't know anything about and just listening to experts talk in expert language that it doesn't make any sense to me. Like what you just said there, Hal, it sounded very smart. Don't understand it. Is actually deeply satisfying. It's something that I get to do a lot because I travel and I speak to industries. My favorite example of this was that I spoke at a association for independent cardboard manufacturers, and they started the day. My talk came right after this. They inducted someone new into the Cardboard Manufacturing Hall of Fame. So I got to watch this whole induction, and just to think, there's a little corner of the universe for everything, and that includes a Hall of Fame for cardboard manufacturers, and that is just wonderful, isn't it? That's just commerce at work, and it's a beautiful thing. So anyway, this was a real fun conversation, and I can't wait to see y'all in Vegas.
Hopefully
Jason, thank you so much.
A cardboard cutout of himself.
Yes. Yes. It's one of my jokes. Whenever someone does something of a favor for me, I say, "Oh, you're my new hero. I'm going to tear up my Bruce Lee poster. I'm going to need a cardboard cutout of you." So yeah, the Cardboard Hall of Fame, that is something to aspire to. Jason Feifer, thank you for taking the time. Jim Morrison, do we have anything else we need to address?
Nope, that's it.
In which case, that is your Appraisal Buzz. I'm Hal Humphreys on behalf of Jason Feifer and Jim Morrison. I hope you have a great rest of the week.